In a surprising diplomatic maneuver, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has reached out to former U.S. President Donald Trump with a conciliatory letter, a move that signals a major shift in Ukraine's approach to securing international support. For a leader who has spent the past 2 years forging strong alliances with Western governments, particularly the Biden administration, this sudden engagement with Trump suggests that Kyiv may be running out of options. With the war against Russia dragging on, Ukraine's counteroffensive failing to achieve a decisive breakthrough, and U.S. military aid stalled in Washington, Zelensky faces the grim reality that he can no longer rely on guaranteed support from his most powerful ally. But reaching out to Trump, who has been openly skeptical about aiding Ukraine, also comes with risks. Is Zelensky's move a smart diplomatic gamble to ensure Ukraine remains a U.S. priority no matter who wins the 2024 election? Or is it a sign of desperation, revealing that Ukraine's war effort is facing serious challenges? Ukraine's shifting political reality. For nearly 2 years, Ukraine has depended on the United States as its largest financial and military backer. The Biden administration has provided more than $75 billion in aid, including advanced weaponry, training, and intelligence support. But political winds in Washington have shifted, and bipartisan backing for Ukraine is no longer a given. Congressional gridlock has delayed new funding, and a growing faction of Republican lawmakers, many aligned with Trump, are questioning whether continued U.S. involvement is in America's best interest. As Trump remains the frontrunner for the Republican nomination and even leads in some 2024 general election polls, Ukraine must consider a future where Washington's approach to the war could drastically change. Zelensky is now trying to get ahead of the curve by opening a direct line of communication with Trump, someone who has repeatedly said he could end the war in 24 hours, but has offered little clarity on how he would do so. Why is Zelensky reaching out to Trump? Several key factors may have driven Zelensky to make this unexpected move. 1. Dwindling U.S. support. The longer the war drags on, the more difficult it becomes to sustain political and public support for military aid. While Ukraine remains a top priority for the Biden administration, its funding requests have stalled in Congress, and Republican opposition is growing. The biggest sign of trouble came in late 2023, when a $61 billion aid package for Ukraine was blocked in the House of Representatives, with U.S. lawmakers prioritizing domestic concerns over foreign conflicts. Zelensky knows that Ukraine cannot afford to be complacent. By reaching out to Trump, Zelensky may be signaling his willingness to work with whoever is in power, ensuring that Ukraine does not become a partisan issue that costs it vital support. 2. Trump's potential return to the White House. Trump has consistently criticized U.S. aid to Ukraine, suggesting that European nations should take on more of the financial burden. He has also hinted at brokering a deal with Russia, implying that a negotiated settlement might be the best way to end the war. If Trump returns to office in 2025, his administration could dramatically reduce or even cut off military assistance to Ukraine. Zelensky's letter could be an attempt to soften Trump's stance, showing that Kyiv is open to dialogue and willing to make its case directly to him before it's too late. 3. Europe alone can't sustain Ukraine. While Europe remains firmly committed to supporting Ukraine, its resources alone are not enough to sustain the war effort. The European Union and NATO allies have provided billions in aid, but their defense industries are struggling to keep up with Ukraine's needs. With the 2024 European Parliament elections approaching and political uncertainty in key countries like Germany, France, and the UK, there's no guarantee that Europe will be able to fill the gap if U.S. support weakens. Ukraine's leadership understands that without continued American backing, it could lose the war by default, not because of battlefield failures, but because of a lack of weapons ammunition, and financial aid. The risks of engaging with Trump. While Zelensky's outreach could be seen as a pragmatic move, it also comes with major risks. 1. Alienating the Biden administration. Biden has made unwavering support for Ukraine a pillar of his foreign policy. By reaching out to Trump, Zelensky risks undermining his relationship with Biden and top Democratic leaders, who still control U.S. aid decisions until at least January 2025. If Biden wins re-election, this move could be seen as a sign of disloyalty, potentially straining U.S. Ukraine relations. 2. Playing into Trump's narrative. Trump has framed the Ukraine war as not America's problem, suggesting that Zelensky should negotiate with Russia. If Zelensky is seen as reaching out to Trump out of desperation, it could embolden Trump's argument that the U.S. should push Ukraine into a peace deal, even if that means territorial concessions. 3. Sending the wrong message to Moscow. Russian President Vladimir Putin has long believed that Western support for Ukraine will eventually collapse. If Ukraine is seen as scrambling to secure Trump's favor, Moscow may view this as a sign of weakness, potentially intensifying its military efforts in the coming months. Could this be a turning point? Zelensky's letter to Trump marks a major moment in Ukraine's diplomatic strategy. Rather than waiting to see what happens in the 2024 U.S. election, he is proactively trying to secure Ukraine's place on the global agenda, regardless of who sits in the Oval Office. But this approach is a high-stakes gamble. If Trump wins, Ukraine may find itself forced into difficult negotiations with Russia, especially if U.S. aid is reduced or cut off entirely. If Biden wins, Zelensky's engagement with Trump could be viewed with suspicion, making future U.S. support more complicated. Either way, this move suggests that Ukraine is running out of options and can no longer afford to take American support for granted. The war is no longer just about battlefield victories. It's about ensuring that Ukraine remains a priority for world leaders, no matter who is in power. The road ahead. As the war approaches its third year, Ukraine faces enormous challenges. With a stalled counteroffensive, mounting casualties, and growing Western fatigue, Zelensky is trying to secure his country's future in whatever way possible. Reaching out to Trump may be a necessary step, but it also shows just how precarious Ukraine's situation has become. The coming months will reveal whether this was a bold strategic move or a desperate attempt to keep Ukraine's war effort alive. Either way, the world is watching,